Symbolic History Through Sight and Sound, 33, 1890, Avant-Garde Break. For an image of culture before the mad flight, Dante's Folle Volo, in which we are involved, take a vase from Kamakura, Japan, with a prelude on the one-stringed psaltery, and Eliot's lines from the four quartets. Only by the form, the pattern, can words or music reach the stillness, as a Chinese jar still moves perpetually in its stillness. Yet before the modern, before the romantic, incarnate stretch beyond possibility had flawed the West with symbolist rupture, that sky leap and crazing of the temporal fabric. Against that ancient East, Delacroix's mid-19th century Jacob wrestling with the angel, like stormy Liszt fables the Fausta champion, out of judgment Hebrew by Promethean Greece. Yeats in a vision, a civilization is a struggle to keep self-control, and in this it is like some great tragic person. Loss of control over thought comes toward the end. First a sinking in upon the moral being, then the last surrender, the irrational cry, revelation, the scream of Juno's peacock. In Gauguin's 1888 Jacob and the Angel, symbolist vision breaks so far with nature. Art is an abstraction, Gauguin wrote, that the padre and his witnessing congregation could only laugh at the artist's wish to hang that picture in the church. And who took Satie's piano pieces of the strange names, the 1890 Nocien, as musical compositions at all? It is the abandon of Rimbaud's Bateau Ivre, drunken boat of 1871, once guided, like this Delacroix, by the ropes of its haulers, trafficking in Flemish wheat or English cottons under the stupid eye of lighthouses, le niais des falots. Gauguin has cut loose from that life class, job and family, celebrates Rimbaud's takeover, comme je descendais des fleuves impassibles. As I was going down impassive rivers, I felt no longer guided by the haulers. Yelping redskins had taken them for targets, having nailed them naked to colored stakes, au poteau de couleur. What if the waves, eternal rollers of victims, which have washed him clean of wine stains and vomit, have also scattered rudder and grappling hook? He is bathed dans le poème de la mer. If the angels of the Babylonian starlight brought in on the classical world a fabulous formless darkness, their Western successors of Rococo ceremony, hier Bach and Günther, have filled even the last call with sensuous promise. Schlage doch, gewünschte Stunde. Where is Yeats' fierce incursion of the absolute, a glittering sword out of the east? Where Rilke's every angel is terrible, ein jeder Engel ist schrecklich. The 9th-century mosaic vault of St. Praxed's in Rome is wide-eyed with the Dark Age revelation which dissolved Earth's assurance. But that messenger was contained in creed. How frenzied now the Zarathustra cry to the rending infinite. Moreau's last sketches, 1897, for the unpainted dead lyres. The great lyre of the soul has just silenced all those voices that glorified nature. This superb lyre is raised, held by a dark, terrible angel armed with the cross of blood. So Rilke, 1912, as Europe armed for war, would pace the bastions of Duino over a storm sea, and catch, as if roared by wind, Wer, wenn ich schreie, hörte mich denn aus der Engel Ordnungen? Who, if I cried, would hear me then among the angel orders? Was Munch's 1893 cry, after Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque, Romantic, a yet wilder charging of the personal and temporal, or its dissolving return to the transpersonal abstract? The poles defined the art, since the insufferable loading of romantic realism, as in earlier Munch, climaxes here in a stylization which becomes its mask. So Strindberg abstracted his ghastly marriages into more and more symbolic dramas. And does not the suspension of tonality in dissonance, what Mahler, 1860 to 1911, advanced in his symphonies like a throttle, to the culmination of this, the 9th, deflect Liszt's blatant major to an estrangement of the cry it heightens. Naturalist Manet deplored the influence of symbolist Moreau. Moreau has chosen the wrong path. He leads us to the incomprehensible, while we want everything to be understandable. That realist romantic rift had stamped the century, but the poles were always inbreeding. Rouault and Matisse would study with Moreau. By report, expressionist Munch visited there. The camera, he said, cannot compete with painting so long as it is impossible to use it in heaven and hell. Cézanne, whose revolution peaked as Munch's began, must have thought himself on the other side, from the violent Daumier realism of his youth, boyhood friend of naturalist Zola, through his Pissarro awakening to landscape apprehended in light and air, this 1873 panorama of Auvers, to the objective formalization of the actual, as in these card players of 1890 to 92, he practiced Manet's science of the physical. Yet Cézanne throughout was overriding the real. His impressionism is already an abstract of brushwork planes. His radical first caricatures leap from the prose journalism of Zola toward the visionary Baudelaire he memorized. The voyage, ô mort, vieux capitaine, il est temps, levons l'ancre. The worm-kissed transcendence of a carrion, the repeated spectre of the 7 old men in their ant-swarming city. From Baudelaire's correspondences, nature is a temple where from living pillars will come from time to time a confused phrase. One passes there through a forest of symbols, as under the scrutiny of familiar eyes. Vast as the night or as the light of day, perfumes, sounds, and colors correspond. Vaste comme la nuit, et comme la clarté, les parfums, les couleurs, et les sons se répandent. Cézanne's analysis points to Rimbaud. A black, E white, I red, you green, O blue. Vowels, I will tell one day the latents of your birth. These card players, Munch's cry, from the same years, grip, though differently, Rimbaud's Season in Hell. I made every hope vanish from my mind. With the lunge of the beast, I leapt on every joy to strangle it. Misfortune was my god. Spring brought me the idiot's terrifying laughter. And in the ninth, unfinished symphony by Mahler's first master, Bruckner, also from 1891 to 94, the ripsaw of dissonance cleaves a chorale and fugal build-up of studied polyphonic form. But the dissonance yields to a close as calm, as classically harmonious as Cézanne's 1896 Lake of Annecy. I will arise and go now, and go to Annecy. Yet there is a puzzle in Cézanne's classicism, his admiration for Poussin, and belief that he himself was reconstituting that noble order of plains. Since the cubist colors, here emerging from tree and mountain, water and sky, effect a prismatic diffraction of Poussin's Cartesian space, as new to the world as the wave equations of Maxwell. Did Bruckner so reconstitute the polyphony of Renaissance and Baroque, Wagnerian chromatics exploding Gabrieli? The 19th century cult of Bach, as in Franck's prelude, chorale, and here fugue, is cognate with Cézanne's espousal of Poussin, as with Puvis de Chavannes, who in this sketch for a fresco of summer also revived the dream of classical order, like the Parnassians in poetry, Heredias. Maternal earth, who to the gods would seem yet gracious, with each spring, as for a tomb, brings to the broken urn a canthus bloom. Fait au chapiteau brisé, verdir une autre acante. But all that is somehow backward-looking. Against Cézanne's always vibrant bathers, or the pointillism of Seurat, both the steamers of Puvis, however mired, with Franck's chromatics in the reeds of the 80s. Take eloquence, said Verlaine, and wring its neck. Perhaps only Reger, especially in the Bach-based cello suites, projects formal Baroque beyond Wagner toward the modern stripping. A leap as far as Mallarmé made from the Parnassians, the virginal, vigorous, and beautiful today, will it tear for us with a blow of its drunken wing the hard, forgotten lake which haunts under frost, the transparent glacier of flights that have not flown, le transparent glacier des vols qui n'ont pas fui? Only by vivifying abstraction could the arts of that late century repossess the natural health of Goethe 100 years before, which Friedrich and Beethoven would carry over into the transcendental yearning of 1820. Goethe, happy only is the soul that loves, glücklich allein ist die Seele, die liebt. All those now used up, laughing suns and pastures bright, and Maytime harvests of delight. My Lied, wie herrlich leuchtet mir die Natur, wie glänzt die Sonne, wie lacht die Flur. In 1820 England, that first immediacy, O blithe newcomer, yields to a moodier colouring as of autumnal Keats, season of miss and mellow fruitfulness, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. While in Turner's Mortlake Terrace, where the sun spills over, dissolving the wall, Earth's diffraction into light and air has begun. By the avant-garde break, what vertigo of electric technique lifts expressionist joy from its gates of hell base, the flight of Van Gogh's lark, hair-triggered to an anguished opposite. So Rimbaud, I know skies split with lightning, water spouts, the surf and currents. I have known the night, and dawn exalted like a flock of doves. I would have shown children those sunfish of blue waves, the fish of gold, the singing fish, ces dorades du flot bleu, ces poissons d'or, ces poissons chantants. Bartók, 50 years later, closes his fifth quartet with such a drunken boat injection of the Beethoven trio. Rimbaud through the 70s, Van Gogh through the 80s, most intense spirits of the time, both cracked up. Van Gogh's rapture of wings over wheat closed in by 1890 to the last road, disappearing under a fatal flight of crows. Rimbaud's sabotage was of his poetry, by that tropical burning out he had predicted in A Season in Hell. My day is done. I am leaving Europe. Sea air will burn my lungs. Lost climates will tan me. I will have gold. I will be lazy and brutal. But now I am accursed. The poet angel, the génie, oh, fertility of the mind and vastness of the universe, illuminations, goes under. Je voudrais me taire. There is night, the quiet Friedrich and Beethoven distilled again from Goethe. Over all hills is peace. Through all trees you can trace hardly a breath. The birds are asleep in the wood. Wait, soon like these, you too will rest. Über allen Gipfeln ist Ruhe, in allen Wipfeln spürest du kaum einen Hauch. Die Vögelein schweigen im Walde. Warte nur, balde ruhest du auch. By 1890, even in England, the winter heavens of Meredith hint at the form-twisting of Van Gogh. Lengths down our road, each fir tree seems a hive, in swarms outrushing from the golden comb. While Hopkins' evening, frightful a nightfall, folded rueful a day. The times are nightfall, and the light grows less. The times are winter, and a world undone. That evening strange to be time's vast womb of all, home of all, hearse of all, night. Though the Victorian island had hardly passed with the symbolist continent through the collapsing antinomies, the yea and nay fusion of eternal recurrence, Nietzsche, this world, a monster of energy, without beginning, without end, a becoming that knows no satiety, no disgust, no weariness, this Dionysian world of the eternally self-creating, the eternally self-destroying, my beyond good and evil, this world is the will to power, and nothing besides, and you yourselves are also this will to power, and nothing besides. Yet Hopkins could almost have spoken for Van Gogh. This to hoard unheard, heard unheeded, leaves me a lonely began. Of course the break had shown at the peak of transcendental and romantic inebriation, most strikingly at the art surface with Turner or this Constable, at the brooding core with Friedrich, this last Easter road to the cemetery. In poetry it was Hölderlin, above all, in whom nostalgia for the infinite began to crack the canons of utterance, compressing the twofold time symbol of the gods' indwelling and soul's deserted winter into that almost fragment called the half of life, Hälfte des Lebens. Wreathed with yellow pearls and with wild roses hangs the land in the lake, O blessed swans, and drunk with kisses you dip your heads in the holy, sobering water. Mit gelben Birnen hänget und voll mit wilden Rosen das Land in den See, ihr holden Schwäne, und trunken von Küssen tunkt ihr das Haupt ins heilig nüchterne Wasser. Where, alas, shall I catch it blooms in winter? Where at the light of sun and earthy shadows, speechless and cold, stand the walls, in wind the veins clatter? Weh mir, wo nehm ich, wenn es Winter ist, die Blumen, und wo den Sonnenschein und Schatten der Erde? Die Mauern stehen sprachlos und kalt, im Winde klirren die Fahnen. A testimony to the rifted love of romantic that wrapped Hölderlin's God claim, abuts on the desired Italy of Childe Harold and Turner, of Mendelssohn's Symphony, or Shelley's Wild West Wind, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers, so sweet the sense faints picturing them, the whole postcard dream on which generations were reared. Yet in some watercolor sketches, unlike the canvases he dressed for show, Turner could cleave through all that, as in the performing art of music no composer perhaps did or could. So these boats at sea anticipate the negative capability of the minimal. Rimbaud. I wrote silences, I wrote nights, I recorded the inexpressible, fixed vertigos. Elle est retrouvée, quoi, l'éternité, c'est la mer mêlée au soleil. It is found again. What? Eternity. It is the sea mixed with the sun. Was Monet's Sunrise from the same year as that Rimbaud, on the same track? Impressionist eternity pursued through a shimmer of light and air? Emily Dickinson's I'll Tell You How the Sun Rose, a ribbon at a time? Or later Wallace Stevens, the body dies, the body's beauty lives, so evenings die in their green going, a wave interminably flowing. No objects but modes, relations but of no substance, the wave motion of light, and no ether to be waved. In that France of the 70s, after the Franco-Prussian War, where first Impressionist lightning joined Symbolist estrangement, and Saint-Saëns and his pupil Fauré, played by Leonard Rose on one record, formed the Society for French Music, and began the etherealization of Wagnerian chromatics, distilling out its heavy Germanic tug toward resolution, as if the modal and Eastern already beckoned beyond tonality. Fauré. In that Paris, an American whistler, as much as any, leavened Western realism with the Japanese print. This nocturne in black and gold, The Falling Rocket, to provoke in England Ruskin's slander, with the Pyrrhic victory of Whistler's suit. Can you explain to the jury, Mr. Whistler, what constitutes a work of art? The monocle scans them.